let's get to Christy in old Milwaukee, Kelly's favorite beer. All right, what's up, Christy?
Hi, Dr. John. How are you doing today?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good.
What's happening?
So, my question for you, I'm gonna read it so that I'm a little more coherent. I'm a little nervous, but
Okay. Don't be nervous. But coherence is so good.
Yes. How can I stop lying to save my marriage? So, I've been married to my husband for almost 4 years. This is a second marriage for both of us, and we both have grown children who live on their own. We're empty nesters now. But my husband and my children have never really gotten along, and I always kind of feel stuck in the middle. We can't do holidays together or anything else for that matter. I try not to bring up anything to do with my kids. If I have a day off and I plan to spend it with my daughters, I try to avoid the topic. He tells me he never wants to discourage me from spending time with them, but for some reason I always feel guilty if I even bring up anything that has to do with them.
Why?
So if he asks I feel like with my ex-husband was very controlling and very emotionally abusive. And I know my husband now is not like that at all, but I still feel like I don't know if I'd say it's a defense mechanism.
But why can't your kids and him be in the same room? Why can't y'all do holidays together?
I feel like they've done things in the past that kind of sabotage certain things.
Who's they? Your kids?
My kids, yes.
Okay.
So, for instance, they showed up really late to our wedding. That was one thing my husband will bring up. And it was a very small wedding. It was just a handful of us, and we couldn't do anything because they hadn't shown up.
How long ago was that?
That was almost 4 years ago.
And how old are these kids?
They're in their 20s. They're all adults. They all live on their own. 2 of them are married.
But what I'm getting at is, so your 20-year-old kids, they had a little temper tantrum power play on your wedding. That was dumb and immature, like 20-year-olds are. And
right.
Your grown-up husband can't sit back and be like, hey, the family that they thought they were going to have has exploded. And I'm new, and I'm going to take some getting used to. And I'm going to have to be the mature one here for a season. He can't do that. He has to act like a child too.
Seems that way, yeah. And so I end up trying not to bring up anything that has to do with my kids, which really shouldn't be an issue, but it seems like
the
only arguments we ever have to do with my kids, to be honest.
That's a huge deal, though. That's like saying the only thing that's hard for me is breathing. Right? Yeah. That's your life. Those are your kids.
I know.
Is your husband, I hear this often when folks get remarried and they marry somebody who wants to pretend that their new spouse's previous life didn't exist, so that they can have them all to themselves. And I hear it's often women who have men with children, and they want to pretend that man was not with somebody else and had kids with somebody else and had intense, intimate moments with somebody else, and the kids are annoying. It's rare that I see it flipped, but here we are. Is it possible that your husband just wants to pretend that your previous world didn't exist and he's got you all to himself?
I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like more I think from his perspective, I tend to baby my kids. And so he's just like, let them be adults. They're on their own now. Let them fend for themselves kind of thing. Whereas I always feel like I'm still around and I'm still their mom. And so yes, I still want to be there to support my kids.
What does support mean?
No, just emotional support. I'm not financially supporting them in any way or like that, but just.
So he doesn't want you talking to them?
No, he'll say I can. And he says he doesn't want to interfere with my relationship with them.
Yeah, I know, but he is.
But he is.
So you've heard me say this on this show a million times. Behavior is a language. He can say whatever he wants. I don't give a crap what he says. I care what he does. And almost as important as what he does. It's how he makes you feel whenever you're doing whatever it is you're doing. And if
Mhm.
you're on the phone with your daughter or you're on the phone with your son, who happens to be an immature 20-something-year-old, they're going to have to get in a long line on that one. And do you
Right.
suddenly feel like I have to shut this thing down or I'm going to have hell to pay in this house? And it might not be physical hell to pay or it might not be verbal hell to pay, but it's that disgusting look at, oh my gosh, I got married an idiot or I married some soft old lady. Like, and you have to lie and shut it down. Um, Behavior's a language, dude. Right?
Yeah. I feel like I can talk with my kids without a problem, but I feel like if I work off shifts, and so I feel almost guilty on the days that he has to go to work, where I can just spend a day with the kids or spend the day with my grandkids,
That's
and
on you.
it just.
That's on you. Those are your feelings.
Mhm.
Now, let me push on that a bit. You feel guilty. You feel all these things. And you said some of that is lingering from your past marriage, where maybe if you did spend a day with the kids, you had hell to pay when you got home. Are you unfairly um, taking a picture of your old ex husband and cutting it out and pasting it on the face of your current husband? Has he ever said when he gets home from work, like, oh my gosh, you're not here, you're with your stupid kids? Has he ever said that?
No,
Has he
he's
ever
never said that.
has he ever even hinted at that?
No, he hasn't.
Why are you doing that to yourself?
That's a really good question, because I do feel like I do have a tendency to put him in that place of like, and he'll tell me, I'm not your ex. I'm not this person that used to belittle you and say things like that.
So here's the deal.
But
People lie for on the whole for one of three reasons. Number one, they're have a pathology, right? They're psychotic. They think that they're smarter than everybody around them. The second reason people lie is to keep themselves safe. Like, I have to lie or somebody's gonna like, are your kids in that house? No, they're not there. Like, I'm gonna lie to keep myself not harmed. The third one
mhm.
is to preserve relationship. It's social status is in the nerd literature. I'm gonna try to keep this fantasy going that everything's okay. Which one of the reasons of those three reasons are the reasons that you don't tell your husband the truth, that you're running around behind his back?
Mhm.
Do you feel unsafe? Are you trying to pretend that everything's okay?
I
Um,
feel like it probably is to be safe, but it's more to avoid an argument.
no, but
Like
you're not
it
telling me about
shouldn't.
any argument you have. Why would you argue?
We end up arguing over. I guess every once in a while it will be spending time with the kids, or how come you're with. I I know I'm talking in circles. um.
Here's what it sounds like. If I'm Can I be super honest with you?
Yes.
It sounds like he's an abusive jerk that you're trying to protect, but also quietly, covertly ask questions on how you can live in that world. Or you have created a fantasy narrative that he is going to be bad too. And so you curb your actions and behaviors when it comes to the most important people in your life, which are your kids. And then you blame him for your behavioral choices that he has nothing to do with. And then in the blame, y'all get in a fight and you end up arguing about things. It's one of those two things. Which one is it?
I feel like it's probably the second one.
You
Yeah.
don't go visit your kids when you want to, or they say, hey, mom, come over and see us. And you're like, well, I got to be home because husband gets home soon. And then he gets home 20 minutes late and you are enraged. Not because he's 20 minutes late or not because he came home, or not because you're not happy to see him, but because he kept you from seeing your kids and really he didn't. And then you act short or you act a little bit mean, and then he responds to that. And now we're in a fight, and you're saying the fight's about the kids, and it's really not. Is that fair?
It can be. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's fair.
I am concerned that he isn't sitting down saying, hey, we have to heal this. We all have to be able to be in a room together. Or is it
And
you keeping everybody from being in the same room together?
No, I have brought that up. I'm like, I think we should sit down and just talk about this because this is getting ridiculous.
Yes, correct.
But at the same time, he's like, they're not going to want to hear what I have to say, and it's just going to blow up. And that's how he feels. And
What is he is he going to try to parent them?
No, I think he would just tell them to basically just grow up and stop acting like children, ironically, because that's kind of how he's acting.
It's 100%. He's like, I'm taking my ball and going home. What an immature guy. Like, what are they doing that's, I'm fascinated by this. What are they doing that is so immature? They got jobs. They're financially on their own. And they call their mom once a week or twice a week to check in. Like, what is so immature about how they live?
Well, I'd say they call me pretty much every day for something or other. They'll ask me for advice for different things, or especially my girls, we're real close, so we do talk quite often.
So one thing that's super common about if you lived under the rule of an abusive spouse for a period of time, and the result is a divorce, but that abuse and that hunkering down happens years before the papers are finalized.
Mm-hmm.
Kids and a protective spouse will circle the wagons and have a very deep, connected, sometimes enmeshed, sometimes unhealthy, but often very tight-knit relationship because they had to survive.
And I think that was us. We had a very, very close relationship.
And so you have to be careful as they're adults to not use them now to prop you up. And you have to teach them how to fly and say things like, here's a good example. I called, this is several years ago now, I had a student who had passed away and I had to make an announcement to a bunch of his friends. And I called my mentor, the guy that first taught me how to make these kind of phone calls. And I said, hey, here's what I'm about to do. And he said, John, listen, what you just said is right. And you don't need to call me anymore. You know what you're doing. And I trust you. They trust you. And they're lucky to have you. And so do you see what I'm saying? Like, he heard me. He affirmed what I was doing. And then he also ended with, and you don't need to call me every time. And so it feels good when your kids call you every day and ask you for questions and ask you for, hey, should I do this? Should I do this? That feels so good and so empowering. And at some point, you're using them to make you feel important. And that's a heavy burden for your kids to carry. So if they call you to ask you about car insurance, you can say, yeah, I would use this. This is the insurance we use, and I like it. And by the way, you don't need to call me every time for car insurance. I trust you. You're a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? There's those little nuggets to say, there you go.
To more empower them and not have them depend on me. Fair.
But all of that is going to take some healing time. And it sounds like, honestly, everybody needs to grow up. You, him, kids, everybody needs to grow up. And he doesn't have any position right now to be lecturing your grown children. What he does have is, hey, I'm watching my wife wither and die here. Because I'm forcing her to not be whole. Or you, Christy, are choosing to not be whole. Because you're not going all in on this marriage, right?
Mm-hmm. I feel like I have to live in two different lives. Like my lives don't mesh. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, but I want you, when you hear this call come out, I want you to hear how many times you said the words, I feel, I feel, I feel. And I want you to write down what you feel. And then I want you to demand evidence from those feelings. Because I have a sense that those feelings are very, very real, but they are not telling you the truth.
That could be.
And maybe you take husband out for a lunch on a Saturday or for breakfast on a Saturday, and you have spent 2 weeks writing down your quote unquote feelings. And you can ask him, hey, I'm going to run these feelings by you. These are mine. These are all mine. These are stories I'm telling myself, as Brene Brown says, and that's how me and my wife do it. The stories I'm telling myself are, I have to live 2 lives because you can't be around my kids, and if you are around my kids, you feel like you gotta lecture them. The story I'm telling myself is our marriage isn't gonna ultimately work out because I'm not gonna choose my kids, you over my kids. The story I'm telling myself is I'm a terrible mom because you say I talk to my children too much and they're adults. And I want you to go down all those stories and let him respond to those things. And at some point, you're gonna have to decide, I'm gonna let my needs be heard. And my needs are I need everybody that I love and care about in the same room, my grown kids and my husband. And I gotta quit living 2 lives. And your grown kids can opt out. They can say, we don't like this dude, we wanna be gone. And they get to do that. They get to do that. And I guess at the end of the day, your husband gets to choose that too. He's a grown up, and you get to decide whether you want to be married to a man who won't be in the same room with your kids. That's on you. But at the end of the day, you all have to make some hard choices. But those hard choices start with you being honest about feelings and reality. You got to choose reality, and you got to be willing to have your needs be met. To say them out loud and say, here's what I need. I need everybody under the same roof. I need everybody acting like adults, and I'm willing to go first. I think this is a solvable problem, Christy. I really do. I think you might be getting in your own way. And maybe for the first time in your life, you can allow yourself to finally be loved. When you're just going to have to practice what that feels like. And it's going to take a season.